pan-fried pyramid patchwork. Let's pan-fry some scraps. Pan-fried patchwork, anyone? You just cook 'em a little long in the scrap bin, and before you know it, you got you a block. Today's episode, we are going to try and pan-fry some scraps. Yep, right here on the channel, nowhere else is anyone going to put cloth in a pan and make a quilt block. Stay tuned to find out how we achieve this block. This video is a long video. I accomplished two things in this video. One, I give instructions on how to make a scrap quilt and make a successful one, and that involves fabric selection. And this video is a long video. You do not have to use the template that I use. You can apply this to any size or shape. If you want to just do squares, you can apply that. If you want to do hexagons, you can apply that. Whatever shape you decide, you can use this tutorial on how to make a scrap quilt. You don't have to have my template or use my design. If you are more interested about learning how to use your scraps, I've divided this into chapters, and I will somehow figure out how to get that information to you so that you can scroll and figure out where you need to be. And for those of you who are already scrap geniuses, you can just fast forward to a spot that shows you how to make this quilt. So it's kind of a two-for tutorial today. We're going to pan fry the scraps, you're going to learn how to make a scrap quilt, and you're going to have a free quilt pattern as well. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I have this quilt going on behind me, and today we are going to learn about how to make a scrap quilt. I make a lot of scrap quilts, and while I'm not the expert, I have learned many things along the way that I would like to share with you. So we're going to do a fabric pull first. Your first thing, you can successfully make a scrap quilt if you choose your fabrics wisely. How many of you have made a scrap quilt and not even maybe a few blocks in, you're like, this is not what I had envisioned how it would turn out. I'm not going to use the word ugly, but I'm not gonna lie, I have made some ugly quilts, ugly scrap quilts, where you start marrying fabrics and you marry this to this and it looks great, and then you go to this and it looks great, and then you're like, I need a border. I don't have enough of any of the rest of this, so I'm gonna add a border, and then you realize, yeah, that was a bad decision. It's still a quilt. It just isn't what you envisioned. And whatever's in your mind doesn't come out on the fabric. So today, I'm going to teach you the basics of your fabric pull, how to marry the fabrics together successfully, and to also discuss some of the hiccups along the way, that when you do marry some fabrics together, they are not the perfect union. So let's get started. I am going to make a brown quilt. Now, brown is not something I put in any of my quilts. I have a brown bin. My brown bin has filled up because I do inherit other people's scraps. People give me fabric. I do buy scrap bags. Brown is in that, so I have brown, and I never use it. And so I thought, well, I'm gonna just pick a theme for my next quilt. I'm gonna go brown. I have done red, I have done blue, I have done yellow, I have done turquoise. I have not done brown, so I'm gonna pick brown. Chapter 1, the fabric pull. Okay, I'm angling the camera down. So I've got some tans. I put my tans in with my brown. I've got a different shade of brown to the tan. I've got like a rust. That's kind of a greenish brown. More tan. Some floral brown. I don't even know what that looks like. Electric elements. Some tan. So I've got all these different shades. And none of these really go together. Or do they? So you've seen a glimpse of my brown bin. None of those fabrics are from the same fabric line. I'm pretty sure that a handful of those came from Joann's. Maybe a handful of them did come from Electric Elements. And this other stuff I have just acquired over the years that nothing goes together. But I'm going to show you how to make all of those work together. My other fabric selection is the neutral that goes with it. So, how many of you have ever seen a 2-color quilt and just fell in love with it? So it's all one shade of blue, one shade of white. They're beautiful. Scrap quilting is not that much different than a 2-color quilt. I have showed you my brown bin, and now I'm going to show you my neutral bin. Neutral is white. It could be black too, but for this quilt video, we're going to call neutral the white, the off-white, and the tans. Okay, let me show you that bin. This bin, I bet this thing weighs 20 pounds. I have so much in this. And while I'm not really going to show you everything in the bin, you can see that I've got quite a variety in here. Okay, there's color in the neutral bin. So not all neutrals are just a solid white or a solid off-white. They come in with pattern on them, and the pattern is okay. We will evaluate the volume of the fabric, meaning how loud it is, in a minute. So for those of you who don't have a huge bin of neutral fabrics, but do have a solid bolt or yardage of a particular neutral, I recommend using that. It will help you not have to make so many fabric selections. So if you choose let's say you're going with green, then you can just choose a white or an off-white to go with it and reduce your stress just a little, because yes, making a scrap quilt is stressful, but the more practice you get at it, the less stressful it is. So if you do have a solid white or a solid off-white, you can totally use this and not go scrappy with that portion of the quilt. Now I'm going to pull out some fabrics and I'm going to put them up on the design wall, and we're going to say if they go together. Okay, I'm gonna have to take you closer up to the design wall, but right now it all looks like way different browns. We've got extremely dark, we've got extremely rust, we've got a couple that go in between those that would match either one of those but not both. That's where it all ties together. So here we are a little up close. These two prints match. This print does not match this print, but if you marry these three together, they will match. So let me just hold up some fabrics next to this. There's a nice dark brown. It's more of a chocolate brown. Okay, obviously this is a shade darker than this, and this is very homogeneous with this. They have the same color in it. This would go well. There is some contrast, a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. This would go well. This seems to match nothing. This is maybe a shade difference in between the two. And this far away, I'm about 4 foot away from the camera. This doesn't really match. This doesn't really match. Okay. This, I don't think this matches anything. That's a glaring no. No. There's contrast there, but no. This fabric, the tan in this might match the tan in this. This goes with nothing, but that doesn't mean I can't use it because I am invoking my neutral rights in this quilt. Yes, I'm invoking a constitutional thing in quilting. You have to have contrast. So as long as you separate these with contrast, they work together. Yes, that's where we make the mistake. When we start sewing our blocks and making, let's say, a few brown blocks, if those brown blocks touch the browns, it's not going to look right. So you have to have a line of demarcation with neutral. So my design wall is neutral. Technically, you could all have this separated out and all of this brown is still going to look brown from across the room. It'll just be different shades of brown, but it will work. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and pin this up here because this matches nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. Okay, we've got it touching 1, 2, 3, 4 of the fabrics. But watch what I do. I'm going to take this little scrap of neutral and I'm going to put it and separate those two. And look at that. It now matches. Does it match perfectly? No, they're completely different shades. But because I'm separating it with a neutral, it's going to work. So let's look at this. The tan in this is bringing out the tan in that. These two will go together now. This is more of this reads black, but it's actually a very dark brown. This is a different shade of brown, but because I am separating them out by a neutral, they work. All of these work when I separate them out with a neutral. Okay, so your pattern would have to accommodate you doing a scrap quilt. A great idea. So this time every year, Bonnie Hunter starts working on a mystery quilt. So you don't know what the quilt's gonna look like. She will give you a list of fabric colors and yardage requirements, I think right around November 1st time frame. It could be different. I don't remember now the date. It could have already happened. I don't remember. And she allows you to go to your stash, look to see in your stash if you have those colors. If you don't, she recommends the color swatch from the paint store. Yes, that is a thing. I'm not going to demonstrate that today, but that is a very good hint. So make sure to check out her blog. She does excellent in teaching you how to make a scrap quilt. And it's a mystery. So you're sewing the clues and she's already married these fabrics and she's a pro at it. So you need to trust her. I do recommend though, if you do go to and go to this adventure of a mystery quilt, that you stick with the colors that she has selected, because you will learn so much from her wisdom in the colors she has selected. After you get comfortable and know that your quilt, your scrap quilt's going to be a success, then in next year's or the year after's, you can select your own colors because you don't know which color is going to be next to what in the quilt. So you really don't have any wisdom on that without practice. So scrap quilting is all about practice. You need to practice with your scraps, and then the more you practice, just like anything else in life, the better you get at it. So I've got this barbecue neutral. I've been dying to use this. It's a fat quarter. I have cut a chunk out of it for another quilt square and another quilt, but pretty much I have not used this. Can I use this in the pattern I'm going with? The answer is no. If I were to take a measurement on this, my pieces are going to run about 2 inches finished all the way up to 4 inches finished. 4 inches is going to introduce a bunch of color into this, that if I have that red up against the brown, it just glares at you across the room. So I'm not going to use a high volume print for this quilt. This has volume in it, but it's low volume. So it's just little bitty checkers. It's gray and white. Can I use this in the quilt? The answer is yes, because when you step back about 4 to 6 feet, this registers slowly. I'm about 13 inches. I'm now about 24 inches. I'm now about 36 inches, and now we're at 4 feet. And that pattern completely disappeared. No design on the quilt, in the quilt when you look at it from across the room. So there's no pattern on this glaring at you. So those are the kind of fabrics we want to go with our neutrals. Now let me take down the browns and get out some of my neutrals. Okay, I have a tan, a super white, a white with print that doesn't even show up on the camera. This is actually a stripe, and because the stripe is so tiny, it does not show up on camera. I have this cell phone emoticon fabric. I've had this a while. I still don't know how I'm going to use that. It's in my stash. I don't even know why I got it. It must have been on sale. It'll stay in my my fabric bin for years because I haven't figured out how to use that. Here's some moose green batik. And then here's another stripe that's off-white. This off-white and this off-white are both off-white. This beige is not off-white. It is not ecru. It is not white. I'm going to take this completely down off my design wall because it cannot be used. These little phones are about 3 inches across. And the pattern, again, I'm going to be using has 2 inch and 4 inch finished shapes in it, so this will not work. So what about this fabric? This is a postage stamp fabric. Can I use this as a neutral? Let me put it on back here. It reads a darker tan. I can use this. Here I have a red print on the off-white background. Can I use this? The answer is yes. The red still shows, but it's such a small print, it's not gonna matter. I can use this. Can I use this plaid? No. This does not match brown. If this had brown plaid and it was mostly white like this is, this one actually might work. but for this quilt, I'm not going to use this. This actually might work with a pink quilt or red quilt or something else, but this will not work for this one. Could I use this Laura Haney collage? My whites are not going to be up against one another. My tans are going to touch, but they're not going to be up against one another. I could use this. However, if you notice, this fabric has a lot going on, and so if I were to cut into it, I might get a red, a burgundy, a blue, and those things just don't match brown. I'm not going to use this. I could use this in another scrap quilt, but not this one. We've got some little bitty rosebuds. Could I put this as a neutral? While it doesn't really match, again, when you put up against the design wall, it becomes an off-white. This is totally usable. What about this? I'm going to automatically say no, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to put it up here on the wall to see how well it plays with my other neutrals. It has too many chunky color in it. If this was less chunky, I'd be able to use it. The word in red, yeah, that's almost 4 inches. I'm not going to use that one. I've got kind of a beige. It doesn't match that one at all. This kind of now looks green up against the beige. These two don't match. This doesn't match. This kind of matches. That kind of matches. That coordinates but doesn't really match. I can use this because, again, my brown is going to be touching this. My browns are going to be touching this. I will select a color, another color, to put as background filler. So this will be touching a color. So I can marry that with all my other neutrals. I have Little House on the Prairie fabric because it just looks like a wrinkled neutral piece of fabric. All of these will marry well together. So, are you kind of understanding? Are you kind of understanding where I'm coming from on how to select fabrics? Some of you may not have a huge neutral bin. I recommend going out online and finding maybe some laundry basket quilt fabric that's in neutrals, because she does group her neutrals together and sell them, which I love that because it's taking the guesswork out of the neutral fabric for you. However, so pre-cuts, designers, they are a mastermind of color. The colors they use influence us, and we buy them up because we just fall in love with them. But in making a scrap quilt, they've made it extremely hard for us to learn how to marry fabrics and color together. They make it look easy. You can just take a jelly roll that they've created the whole 30-piece line, sew them together, and it goes together and it's beautiful. However, if I went to my stash and picked out 30 fabrics to put into a jelly roll quilt, that's not easy. A lot of things don't match. They've made it easy for us, and so that's why scrap quilts are so hard for you, because you are used to seeing the designer present to you this beautiful layer cake that's all matchy-matchy. There is no foulness. Whenever you put a quilt together using that fabric line, it's gonna look amazing. And so we're kind of spoiled, and they've made it easy for us to get a scrappy look. So that's why you struggle so hard with scrap quilts. Making a scrap quilt is all about marrying the right fabrics what touches and what doesn't touch. Now let's go to the block. So, disclaimer. As I was doing my fabric pull for this, I am not a Civil War quilt person, but just using browns, it's now a light bulb moment to where I will be able to cross something off my bucket list. I will be able to grow as a quilter because this is turning into a Civil War style quilt. So here is the block. I have used different colors of browns and tans and different prints of white. This one even registers yellow. Okay, this is kind of a gray. This is kind of a black. But as you move away about 4 foot, all you see are the dark shapes. If that is the case, you have built the block correctly. On the inverse of this, so I have assigned the darks here. What if I swapped the darks and the neutrals? You would end up with something like this. Brown. I've got brown on my 4 outer triangles that are subcut, okay? And then I've got a tan. A tan makes contrast with the dark browns. The white makes contrast with the browns. I could probably even get away with putting a white up next to that tan because there's enough contrast. But let me put this on the wall. I can have those 2 blocks right next to one another. Do I want to do this? I could, but I'm not going to, because I'm finding that scrap quilts need a negative space to have your eyes rest upon. Because if you just undulate this all the way across and down on the quilt, it will be beautiful, but it'll take you twice as long because that's a lot of piecing. So for the channel's sake, and for the speed's sake of me trying to bring you content, I'm going to space all of my triangles out with another solid in between. Chapter 3, Fabric Retaliation. Okay, so I have got these blocks up on the wall and they all have contrast. However, there's a couple of these that I do not like. So if we come down here and we look at this, I used that postage stamp fabric with that very dark blackish brown fabric, and the blue in the postage stamp is what ended up being cut in that triangle. Up close, there's contrast. Far away, it is not. So let's look at this other corner. So this was a Marcia Durst, is that how you say her name? It was a tan print with a little bit of red splotched and a little bit of blue splotched. Very modern piece of fabric. And this just happened to be the blue. I put it with extremely dark brown thinking, oh yeah, it'll contrast. It does up close, but not far away. So I'm still making mistakes, and that's okay. Because if I just make a little bitty mistake like that, in the whole scheme of things in the quilt, your eye is not going to gravitate towards that. It's still going to look homogeneous amongst the other blocks that were successful. So I will show you, this is an equilateral triangle template pattern. I have a template from Missouri Star Quilt Company. A lot of you may have that template. I will get to the building of this block here in a minute. But now the next step is background. technically I could select a neutral background. I can't go brown because some of these browns would border that. So I don't want to go brown. If I do, it would have to have contrast. Could I go black? Yes, but this is like reeds almost black. This is a brown and dark brown stripe. I can't go black. So I'm trying to figure out what I can use for the background of this that will look right. My stash is all scraps. I do have a few bolts of fabric that I've used off from that my fabric is limited. So I got in my scrap bucket. I wanted to go a salmon color because this is starting to read Civil War. I thought, oh, a salmon color would be beautiful. I don't have enough of that. I just have a very small piece of that. So in trying times with the inflation the way it is and the pocketbook strings that are being cut way too short on food and gas and the necessities, I'm going to opt to use my stash. So at this time, I did not film this, but I put what I had bolts of that I know I would have enough. I just pinned them up on the wall, put my blocks on it, and then I stepped away. And the most successful one I had, I wasn't sure I had enough of, and that fabric I used in my Shark Bite Strings quilt. I will go ahead and reference that up in the corner here on YouTube so that you can go back and watch that quilt series if you want to make that scrappy quilt. I did have a bolt of that. This is Lori Holt fabric. It is like crocheted snowflakes, and I'm like, yeah, that's not really a theme that I really want to put with this. But actually, 4 foot away, you lose that pattern. So here's the fabric. I guess they're a quilt block. They're a star, but it reminds me of snowflakes. It is like hand stitching. I'm gonna go ahead and use this. I got into my scrap bin, cut down the larger scraps I had, made all of these triangles, and then made some subset triangles to go in on the side because those will have half triangles. And watch how this transforms with a third color. This is all going to remain one color. What a difference this makes without being on a neutral background like my design wall. That enriches the chocolates in this. It marries everything together. So this third color that's all one color is, my scraps are married in each of these blocks, but they're not married together. And just adding one color for the background is marrying all of these together. This is where a lot of our scrap quilting goes wrong, where we make like a sampler block and we make another sampler block and we want to make a sampler quilt, and then we go to marry it together, and while the block itself looks matchy, when you put it up against another block, it's no longer matching. It looks horrible. So this is a key. When you are doing a scrap quilt, you want to focus on your neutrals, your color selection, and then how you separate your main color, your main two colors from one another. So now none of my neutrals are touching one another. None of my tans or browns are touching one another. And so we have contrast. Contrast is key. So, are you in? This is a very quick, in about a matter of 4 days, I have enough pieces now to sew together into a large quilt. I still need to cut some of these from my yardage, and that will determine how big I make this. but let me show you how many I've already done. So I started this on Sunday of last week. It is now Sunday of this week. That's when I'm filming. And I have a whole stack of these. And because I utilized the whole size of the template, which I believe is 8.5. No, almost the whole size. I think I'm right there. I now don't remember, but this is, I think, 8-inch finished. So for every one of these, it'd be 8, 8, 8, 8. That's already 32. That'd be 40. That's 48. And I have saved some brown fabric for my border. I'm gonna go ahead and square this off and then go around it with a border. I actually have enough of that fabric in my stash and it will look spot on. Hang on just a second. So I have a 3-yard cut, and I don't know if you can tell this. This is metallic and it is perfect for this. It has black in it, but it also has very different shades of the gold and the brown, which is perfect for this. We don't want it to touch. It would not play nicely if it touched any of these. But if I carry my border out, this is all one edge, and then put this right here and grow it another 10 inches. So my now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, my 48-inch quilt I can make larger with this, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go as large as how many pieces I can cut from this. I don't know how large that's gonna be yet because I haven't done that yet. Let's get to the template. This is Missouri Stars template. Okay. This is considered an equilateral triangle, meaning it's a 60-degree ruler that is equal on all 3 sides. This is what makes this. So basically, you take your scraps and cut them down into strips. The math of this. So I started out small, and then I'm like, I've got to create content for my channel. So let me give you 2 size options. Here are little ones. So the big triangle is cut from a 2.5-inch strip, and then all the rest of these pieces are cut from a 1.5-inch strip. So if you have a honey bun or jelly rolls, you could make this. Very little effort. This is the colored version. I was gonna go totally pink, but then I hit the roadblock of not having enough background fabric of anything that really matched all my pinks, because it would touch and not all pinks match. So I couldn't use that, and that's it evolved into what it is. So here is another little one that I practiced. Again, this would go nicely with the pink that I selected. However, this could actually be used and change it up to where this could be the top part of my triangle in my bigger blocks. Okay, so this finishes at 4 inches in the quilt. So currently it's at 4.5. Whoops. So I can still use these, but I'm probably not. I don't know what I'll use. I may make one more and then make some kind of triangular trivet. I don't know, but so those are the sizes for cutting your strips. For the quilt block I'm demonstrating today, you could use a charm square here actually. That is 5 by 5, but you're gonna have lots of fabric loss. I do not like fabric loss. I like to cheat and use as little as fabric as possible. And that's another thing that the designers, when they design a pattern, the fabric manufacturers love for you to use way more fabric than you need. And so they have you draw a line from corner to corner, trim off the corner, toss that away, don't use that. They love for that. And all of your fabric that gets trapped in your seams have dog ears on this project. Not all, but almost all, because I'm going to show you a tip on how to save 1/4 of an inch on each cut. So this is for a 4.5 inch strip, and the remaining triangles, whether they're the neutrals or the browns, are from a 2.5 inch strip. Again, if you have pre-cuts that have neutrals that you haven't used in another quilt, you could probably get those out and use them at this time. So the thing I despise about this ruler, it does not have a flat spot on the top. I wish that I may figure out a way to grind this off. When I remove that top 1/4 of an inch, when I cut my pieces, I line the top edge and the edge down here on the fabric, and I've just saved 1/4 of an inch of fabric every time I make a cut. If I use it as it is now, I'm going to get a dog ear on all 3 corners, but if I line this top line right here up with the edge of the fabric, I save 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 7 is like almost 2 inches of fabric across the quilt that I have just saved from my scrap bin. Not that my scrap bin needs any more scraps, but I have a bigger scrap left over that will be usable for another quilt, whereas these would all just be, that 1/4 inch would be lost in the dog ears that you just trim off and put in the trash. So 2 inches of fabric across the quilt saved. So when I line this up, okay, we're about 1/2 an inch. So a quarter of an inch is lost in the dog ears. This actually measures, your finished measurement I think is going to be at 9 inches. So this is past the triangle. But when you cut these out, when you cut out your strip set, you're going to measure what your triangles measure. Okay, let me take these down. I'm going to take that measurement, and I probably need to get a regular ruler. Hang on a second. Let me get a regular ruler. And don't just measure one, because these are all biased edges, and I say biased, they're all stretchy edges. 2 of 3 edges are going to be stretchy because they're biased. The third one might be with the grain and it might be against the grain. So one way will be stretchy, the other one won't. So this is a very stretchy quilt pattern. All right. We are at 8 3/4, which I'm not measuring. Yeah, 8 3/4. So you will cut an 8 3/4 strip. Let me make sure that's right. 8 3/4 strip, which is 1/4 inch past this. And because I've moved it down 1/4 of an inch, it hangs off 1/2 inch. That doesn't matter. You can totally cut using this ruler. Cut it, line up your bottom edge, cut it, and you will have like 1/2 inch that you'll have to come slide the ruler up and cut some more. It's not that big of a deal. All right, let's go to the work table, and I will show you how to cut the fabrics and how to make these quilt blocks. Chapter 4, Final Assembly.